Sex, drugs, and witches. I'm Jason Horton.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
And this is Ghost Town.
A murder victim's stepmother is sharing her feelings about the possibility that two killers might be given early parole. The Carlsbad woman doesn't want Michael or Susan Carson to ever be released from prison.
Even the killer's own daughter wants him to stay locked up.
She still fears her father more than 30 years after the murders of 3 people, at least here in California.
I'm here today to tell you the story of a couple, and I think couples are very interesting to me in a lot of ways. We haven't really covered a lot of that, like 2 killers. We've covered a lot of people working solo. We've covered a lot of groups, kind of mass initiatives. But I really find like a couple duo very compelling. So today we're going to talk about Susan and James, or Michael Bayer Carson, the serial killer couple behind the witch killer cult of San Francisco. You're not into that, right?
I mean, witch killer cult plus San Francisco?
Yeah.
If it was witch killer cult plus Fontana, California, not as interesting.
No.
But you know San Francisco, it's going to be...
Could it be anywhere else but San Francisco?
San Francisco, LA, like a real funky San Diego.
Is there a funky San Diego?
There's a funky San Diego.
If you're from funky San Diego, please write in. We need to know about you and your life. But this is really about, and I am new to this term, the folie à deux. It's a rare delusional disorder shared by 2, sometimes more people with unusually close emotional ties. The delusions are usually induced in the passive partner, in this case, Michael, by the active partner, Susan. But let me start from the beginning. Susan Barnes was a normal suburban housewife living a normal suburban housewife existence in 1960s Scottsdale, Arizona. Normcore capital of the world, although now, Arizona, great, we appreciate you. Her husband made good money, she had 2 sons, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it was the 60s, into the 70s, and she became curious about hippie culture kind of as a general idea. She began, and she was still, again, married in Scottsdale with 2 kids, taking LSD, mescaline, and peyote, along with hanging out with her son's high school classmates, which is totally normal and very, very healthy. She also regularly seduced and slept with her son's classmates. Rumor has it she slept with 150 young men and boys. And again, by slept with, I mean probably assaulted, because they were teenagers and high school students. Very, very disturbing, not good. When she turned 35, she began to have visions when she was on drugs and also when she was off drugs. Since she was a child, she believed that she was a psychic, and she kind of embraced this idea of her being this clairvoyant or someone like an oracle in a way. So all of this is happening. Her marriage, to no surprise to anybody, fell apart in the late 70s. Infidelity, drug use, psychosis, whatever. It could be many different things. So she decided to completely reinvent herself. How did she do this? Well, her name is Susan, S-U-S-A-N. She started spelling her name with a Z instead of an S. Wild. Not the first S, the second S.
I did that at my midlife crisis. I was Jason. It's been working for me.
That's cool as hell.
It's been working for me,
I like that. I thought you were going to add a Y, but you just went Z. That's great. Nothing like reinventing yourself. You're like, I'm going to change my life. How about I just respell my name in a stupid way? I love that. That is change. So then she had this vision one day that told her that she needed to find a soulmate. And this is a quote, a soulmate, a partner, a loyal disciple. Great Bumble bio. So she met somebody named James Carson. He was originally from Oklahoma. He was also kind of similar. He had a similar background to Susan. He was kind of into nonconformity, but was very conformist as it appeared. He was middle class. He loved history, religions, philosophy. He earned a degree from the University of Iowa, where he met his first wife. After graduation, he had a daughter that they named Jennifer, and he moved to Arizona. His wife supported him, and he was a stay-at-home dad to his child, and also started dealing pot. So again, like pretty nonconformist in some ways, but very, very normal in other ways. His daughter, too, in every interview that I have read about her, really talks about him being a pretty like conscientious father, very loving, anything bad was kind of because of Susan eventually, and not really because of anyone he was or is, which again, where you think the fault line falls, we'll talk about later. Carson became increasingly antisocial and angry because of his angry outbursts and his inability or maybe unwillingness to get a job. He got divorced in 1977. So they have pretty parallel kind of lives. They meet, they converge at a party. And the first thing Susan says to James when they meet is that his name is Michael. And he says, "No, my name is James." To which she responds, "No, you are Michael, an angel of God." From then on, he just went by Michael. James' daughter, Jen, again, really backs her dad in most ways, says that when the pair met, quote, "It was almost like two magnets just shooting across the room and joining. I think they had great sexual attraction," which is a weird thing for a daughter to say, but I think it really shows kind of what we're working with here. It didn't take long for the new couple to really lean into a life of sex and hallucinogenic drug taking. They married or had some kind of ceremony by moonlight at Stonehenge and toured Europe for a year. Susan, with her drugs and visions, kind of developed her own religion during all of this. Kind of, I mean, very much so. It was a fringe, radical. I even hesitate to say it's an interpretation of Islam because she just used the word Islam, and Allah, it really bears no, I don't want anyone to think it even looks like a Muslim culture or the Islamic religion, because it's not. It just has these like strange labels that she co-opted from Islam. So they returned to the US in 1980 because they ran out of money, and they began going by the surname Bear and describing themselves as vegetarian Muslim warriors. Great. Here we are. So that was a thing. But the big tenet of their belief system that vegetarian Muslim warrior doesn't really touch upon was their obsession with witches and witches surrounding them. They thought that witches were all around them, in the people they meet, people in power, just everywhere, and that they were using mental powers to control or trying to control them and other people. And they believed that they were put on this earth to kill these witches. And by they, I mean mostly Susan. Let's be real. Michael was kind of along for the ride in a disturbing way. Later, Jen would say of her father, if he had fallen in love with a televangelist, he would have become one. If she had joined ISIS, he would have too. He was that much of a follower. He was drawn to extremists, people he found really exciting. And that's also strange too, because like extremist and exciting are not like, it's not an A to B thing. There's a lot of stops on that path of like, oh, you know what I find exciting? A horror movie. This guy finds maybe joining ISIS exciting.
And I'm sure if it was something like, oh, she's like, I really love the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
That wasn't the kind of excitement and interest that probably appealed to him. It was probably stuff on the sexier, darker side of it.
Totally. Yeah. And I think there's levels of that to many relationships where it's like, oh, she's really into hiking and he's going hiking with her. But to this level, it gets very dark very fast. So when they come back from Europe, they move to San Francisco into the apartment of Karen, Keryn Barnes, a 23-year-old transplant from Georgia who moved to California to find fame, not to Los Angeles, up to San Francisco. So they met her at a party. And from the source that I found this, most people at the party were repulsed by the couple's odd, pretty hostile demeanor. I don't know who invited them, but Karen was very spiritual, open. She was a new transplant from Georgia, and she kind of dug it. She was like, I'm here to meet people. I'm at this party. Like, I'm open-minded, spiritual, whatever that meant to her at the time. So then they moved in with her, which is what happens at parties all the time. You just go and move in with a 23-year-old. So, they're these older people at this point, this couple, moving in with this young woman, and immediately things go bad. Michael and Susan want more from Karen than just cohabitation. They want her to be Michael's second wife and to enter into a polyamorous relationship with them, which also, for Haight-Ashbury at the time, not too out of the scope of things. I mean, Karen did allow them to move in. She didn't like the idea, though. Karen didn't want to be Michael's second wife. And when she hesitated or kind of balked at the idea, Susan conveniently had a vision that Karen was a witch. So Susan and Michael plotted to kill Karen. Simple, right? We'll tell you more after the break.
Though we love what we do, Jason and I don't just Google true crime and weird history all day. Sometimes we need a freaking break. That's when I close my computer and pick up my phone for a little Best Fiends. Have you heard of it? You should, because it's gotten over 100 million global downloads. We're huge fans of it, and you should be too. Best Fiends challenges your brain with fun puzzle levels, but it's not like this huge thing. It's casual. You can play 1 level or 17, whatever time allows for. There are enough stresses in our life right now. Don't let a game stress you out. Best Fiends is also a game anyone can play, literally. It is for adults, but honestly, anyone can and enjoy themselves. Let me break it down. Best Fiends is an awesome mobile puzzle game and honestly different from anything I've ever played. It engages my brain, it's fun, and is whatever type of commitment you want. It's solo maintenance, you don't even need the internet. The internet! Speaking of internet, I was playing Best Fiends just to chill one day. I'm close to level 200, and my power went out. And honestly, I did not even notice. I played and relaxed, and I was off the grid, and it was so fantastic. I only noticed I had no power or internet when it came back on and I had to get back to whatever I was doing at the time. Engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must-play. Download Best Fiends free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Hello.
What a week.
What a week.
How
are you feeling?
Week. Just checking in, no judgment.
A little judgment.
Depends. But no judgment. Just hope you're well and you're keeping it together. And we are trying to do the same thing. Last week's episode.
Oh my goodness.
The JonBenét email episode.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of people reached out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fascinating.
I don't want to really get into what people necessarily had to say. Some people were just curious, and some people were kind of concerned for us.
Yes.
And for that, we're very, very thankful.
I'm concerned for me too, all the time.
And after us doing it, and then me listening to all the audio and reading through the stuff, I definitely got into a different place, and I opted to only put out a little bit of the audio just to give you a vibe of what is happening, because it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of, still put the message out there, but not make it too exploitive.
Yeah.
Which inherently it is. I'm not going to lie. It's exploitive.
Yes, but it's also this woman wanted this stuff.
Exactly. So it's
delicate. And again, who she is and her mental space is for questions, obviously. Yeah.
So just kind of wanted to address that for people. And people were asking for some of the stuff. And then I was listening to it again and I was like, I don't want to be the one. I'm sorry. Like, if you ask for it.
You didn't give them the stuff?
I didn't give them the stuff. If you want to, you can.
Yeah. I guess come to me. I mean, I'm just like, what are people doing with this stuff? I think they're just curious. Maybe I'm naive.
And I would do the exact same thing. It's just after listening to it, it's very disturbing. And it's also very repetitive. And somebody else had reached out to somebody we referenced on the thing. And, I'm just not naming names, not for any reason, but
it also doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter who did what. And, and apparently this person was like, the person in question is volatile and made his life very difficult.
Yeah, made his older people in his life very difficult.
And after hearing that, and I think I naively assumed that, like, oh, maybe this is you're a cohort and not a cohort.
Well, that's what he's framed as.
Yes.
Fairly. But, he dispels that very, very quickly. He's very concerned for her. He's very concerned for himself, the people around him. And it's pretty dark, I would say. And
I will say, what we kind of laid out is a lot of the bulk of it. A lot of the audio and text are extremely repetitive versions of that. I'll tell you that. And, so you're really not missing out on it, except hearing the ramblings of somebody who, we don't know what the situation is. I actually was looking to see if, because there might have been some word that maybe she was living in a possibly a shelter on the street. And I was looking just to see if it was somebody who's kind of like, hey, I have a Venmo. I have a whatever. Because I felt that I was like, I feel like I owe you some money.
Oh, that's nice. You didn't say that before.
When I sent you the Instagram, because there was some new post on there.
Yeah, there's a new post.
New post on there, and I didn't see it. I mean, everything seemed to be kind of copacetic, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to address that because a lot of people reached out, and thank you for reaching out. Thank you for being concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being interested. And this is not any way like a comment on the people that asked.
No,
It's
I would also do,
yeah.
but I also, if you reach out to me, I'll send you this. I have a different, I think I have a different relationship with, again, if you're sending stuff out to major media outlets, I'm like, all right, but that bearing in mind, please, there's a carefulness around this because of this woman's state.
So I'll warn you that it is very disturbing, and it's not just weird disturbing, it's disturbing. Ask Rebecca and put it on her.
Put it on me.
I don't particularly want to do it. Contact Rebecca's Instagram. What is it? Rebecca Lieb?
Yeah.
Rebecca Lieb? Okay, Rebecca
You know
Lieb.
my name. But I also, people really took it upon themselves in my experience.
I'm a little narc. You know what I mean? Like I'm a little, I'm not cool. I'm not the cool one in this situation.
I'm half asleep most of the time, so I don't know if that's cool or not. But
Rebecca, maybe she'll send you a couple cigarettes too. I don't know what else.
Clove cigarettes. But yeah, I think it was really interesting. I think I texted you this after where I felt really weird after we recorded that.
Well, after I edited it, and I was just,
oh my
it
God,
was just
you're
in
sitting
my
with
ears.
that information.
I'm just sitting there with that, and it really, I was just very careful what I edited, and I just did not feel. I didn't feel bad about it because I wouldn't have gone into it because, like you said, it was the way it kind of befell us.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a word, but made it. I was just like this. Fate stepped in, and I definitely don't mind that. But past that, I don't particularly want any more to do with it, except unless this person happens to need a helping hand or something like that. And that's what I looked for, and I probably will look again. I have a list of people that I'm checking in on.
That's good. That's good.
Our lives.
I think it's dangerous to reach out to this person firstly, but if they had some kind of way to anonymously give them money,
Absolutely.
I would totally do it.
Yeah,
and I hope they do. I mean, it's a lot. You don't know what you're getting into. I also want to emphasize that, especially with people with mental illness and people who are, in places that you don't know. I think that can be very dangerous.
Did you know we had a Patreon?
Did I?
Yes.
Where am I? What's my name?
That's my segue. Is I figure what's the most comforting thing to do is to segue to patreon.com/ghosttownpod. Mm-hmm. A bonus episode, a new Ghost Town Versus episode is up for the Alderman level and up.
That's right. We had some real thoughts on that.
We had some real thoughts. Up on the Patreon right now. And then I put out episodes with no ads.
Ad-free, baby.
At least try to buy the night before. So this way you have it as an option so you don't have to listen to any ads or any ramblings. Have you guys heard about the government? Our government?
Our government. Keep your other government out of your earwaves. Right now, we're talking about the Ghost Town government.
We're talking about Jeanette Link.
Hell yeah.
Brandon Gaddis.
Oh, baby.
Ben Forsyth.
Yes.
Ashley Matson. Governor Chris Witt.
That's my applause.
And if you put all of them together, it's the shape of a pentagram.
What?
Don't read into it.
Holy shit.
Check that out.
Oh, that's so great.
Check out youtube.com/Jason Horton for some videos that we did. Give it a subscribe. Give some of the videos a thumbs up. We're using that to help promote Ghost Town passively. So if you're like, how do I help these people out? You're listening. Thank you. And if you're a patron, thank you. If you want to do it in a very free way, you can find it in the show notes, click the link and subscribe, like it, listen to an episode, let it play through. It all helps.
Yes, it definitely does. I'm not sure how, but I think it does.
Rebecca, it's the algorithm.
The algorithm. The dark web?
New media. Do you know new media?
Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Is it Wi-Fi? Do I need a card that I pay, a prepaid calling card for this Wi-Fi?
Yes.
You're talking about. I'm going to take us back to a time that I'm more familiar with than the now. Let's go back to the 80s, please, where there is no Wi-Fi. When, on March 6th, Karen, Keryn, gets home from work, Susan tells Michael in a different room to kill her. So Michael followed their roommate into the kitchen where he beat her in the head with a cast iron frying pan and then stabbed her 13 times around the face and neck to finish the job. Michael and Susan wrapped Karen's body in a blanket, placed her head on a pillow, and did a series of bizarre, childlike drawings all over the walls before leaving. Very sad, very brutal. Police found Karen's body on March 7th, 1981 in her apartment with the skull bashed in, again, stabbed, blood everywhere. Things on the wall that they drew included Susan's name many times, so they kind of knew that it was, she's just essentially just signing her name on the wall.
It wasn't to throw people off the scent.
No, it was the opposite, I would say, to highlight who did this. One of Karen's friends rushed to the scene of the crime as word got around and informed the police about Michael and Susan and their belief system and kind of their relationship to Karen. It wasn't until police questioned Karen's mother 2 days later that they got a full name, Susan Carson, and her husband, Michael. But unfortunately, Susan and Michael Carson weren't the couple's real names, so police had trouble tracking them down. Police began to search for the couple, but after a year, the trail went cold. In actuality, the Carsons hitchhiked north and found a secluded cabin to live in, which they believed was a refuge provided to them by Allah that they called Allah's Mountain. Eventually, they got bored or maybe kicked out by a park ranger. Who's to say? Then someone let them live in their treehouse, but their strange behavior, their combativeness, their bad attitudes got them kicked out of there. Susan, however, was not going to take that at all. She was not going to be kicked out of a treehouse, my friends. The owner of the treehouse, again, labeled a witch. So they robbed his house, took his handgun and some other possessions, and then set his house on fire. From there, they headed to Humboldt County, where they started working on a marijuana farm. But of course, the couple started not making friends here. They butted heads with a friend of the farm owner, 26-year-old Clark Stevens. He was loud and he drank a lot, and the Carsons saw this as an affront to Allah. Again, coming from people who did a lot of drugs, okay, I guess.
It seems like what they did with witches back in the day. It's like, oh, you did something off-putting?
Yeah.
You must be a witch.
Exactly. And again, it kind of mirrors a lot of...
A communist, you're a communist.
For sure. And even, the Salem witch hunts. It's just like, if something doesn't align with your belief system, you're an enemy of mine. I can do whatever I want to rid you from my life. Susan tried to block Clark from entering the farm one day, so Clark kind of cussed her out. They had an altercation, and Susan, of course, declared Clark a witch and told Michael to kill him. Michael shot Clark in the face. Then they both poured kerosene over his body, set it on fire, and covered it with chicken litter. That's murder number 2. Gruesome, violent, horrific. From nothing. The Carsons headed back even more north to hide out in the wilderness, going into civilization by day for food and supplies. To get to town, the pair would hitchhike. 2 years after the murder of Karen Barnes, in January 1983, they caught a ride with a man named John Hillier in his pickup truck. Susan rode in the middle, and while driving, John's leg touched Susan's leg. Susan felt threatened. I think you know how this is going to go. But more importantly, she'd had a premonition about him. When? In the car? Before he picked her up? Who knows? He was a witch, my friends, so Michael was supposed to kill him. John, though, was pretty athletic. He fought back, and Michael and John wrestled for the gun that Michael got from when he burned down the treehouse. And it was out in the open when all of this happened. Like, they had pulled over people. It was by an overpass. People were looking at them. Police received a 911 call from a roadside fruit stand in Santa Rosa from someone who was witnessing it. According to the witness, Michael got hold of the gun and shot John. 30-year-old John Hillier later died in the hospital. Michael and Susan attempted to drive off in the truck, but police caught up, and a high-speed chase ended with the truck spinning out of control and landing in a ditch. The couple was taken in for questioning, but instead of talking about what led them to shoot John, who was at that point not dead yet, he was still in the hospital, they only wanted to talk about ESP, witches, and their religion. Michael also wrote a letter saying that no one cared that he and Susan had killed the biggest witch in San Francisco. The police were like, what? And then eventually they linked that confession letter, again, confession letter used very loosely, with the murder of Karen Barnes. When police tried to get an on-the-record confession from the Carsons, they said they would only do it with a press conference. So on March 10th, they had their press conference, during which they talked about George Orwell's 1984, President Reagan being the devil, and why witches needed to be killed. At least they're consistent, though. Michael said that Susan had the power to identify witches via visions that she got directly from Allah, which is how they realized they had to kill Karen. So while Susan went around identifying witches, Michael would do the job of killing them. They also admitted to killing Clark, and after 6 hours of ranting at this press conference, were charged with multiple crimes, including 3 counts of first-degree murder. I find it interesting that people let them talk for 6 hours at this press conference. Their trial began in May 1984. Despite confessing to everything in the press conference, both Susan and Michael entered not guilty pleas. But after 3 days of trial, which Michael's daughter described as a zoo, they were both found guilty and given 25 to life. And they were actually up for parole in 2015. Michael just declined parole, and Susan was denied because she was still unrepentant for the murders. Their earliest official release date won't be until 2059. Authorities think, too, that they might be responsible for nearly a dozen other murders in Europe and the United States, but they don't have enough evidence to charge them for it.
It does seem like it wasn't necessarily a ruse to get her husband to kill people. I mean, it seemed like they believed that they were witch killers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. I think, again, it's a lot of different things that people allowed to happen. And I think it doesn't seem like they're protecting themselves that much. The thing that really kept them going for so many years was not having their legal names, moving around from different places, and general, like, inability for people to properly track them down at all.
I'd be interested to see the people that were clearly not witches.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anyone that they came across with for any reasonable amount of time that was not a witch?
Yeah.
Because I wonder what the trigger was. I mean, obviously any kind of pushback, but like, and how much worse would it have gotten if they weren't, in a high-speed chase and went into a ditch? I mean, people, would it be more than just brush? When it becomes like brushing the leg, it's like, okay, now we're going a lot further.
Yeah, it just escalates. Like many serial killers, activity just seems to escalate. It's just also they were still like, I keep thinking about them being invited to parties and stuff. Like they were still a part of society for a lot of the time that they were actively a threat to people.
I'm sure the circles they ran in were probably a little more open to that kind of community thing. And, the Zodiac Killer was, in play in the late 70s. And then, you have things like Satanic Panic and a lot of witchcraft, otherworldly, New Age was very popular. So the timeline seems to kind of fit with a lot of those other things.
And it's really kind of a slight turn from New Age spirituality and the occult to violence. Like I think it's much, and again, I think to say that, of course, like believing a certain thing means you're violent. No, obviously not. But I think, the idea of the occult and spirituality and drugs and expanding your mind, like that's really not that far from expanding your mind to the point where you think that there are witches and maybe you need to avenge them. They are still in jail
You seem to be hung up that they got invited to so many parties, and you're like, why is anyone inviting me? Yeah.
Well, I won't kill you if you're a witch. I'll be fun. I'll bring a mix.
like a music mix?
I'll bring a Chex Mix and a music mix.
Oh, great.